My name is Bill Jacoby, Senior Solutions Architect, Amazon Web Services. The talk today is running Microsoft workloads on Amazon Web Services. It's a practice I would highly recommend. We got a lot to cover, and I'm going to just dive right in. So my agenda is real simple. My agenda is, why would you want to do it? Why would you want to consider running running Windows on AWS? What have we done? How do we know that what I'm going to show you actually works? I'll talk about what Amazon.com did with Microsoft servers. Living on the edge, I'm going to do some demonstrations of clients and servers, servers running on AWS, clients running locally. We're going to talk about cost, licensing, and we can't end without architecture and technology. So let's hit it. Okay, so the first sort of question here is why cloud? And why cloud doesn't actually differ when you're talking about Windows versus Linux. So the typical reasons, these are the kinds of things you might see in any presentation on why cloud. And my next slide talks about why cloud for Windows. But why cloud in general? Agility, you can spin up resources as you need them. Why cost? You can trade CapEx for OpEx. And in general, the variable expenses that are associated with OpEx tend to be lower. Our TCO studies show that they're lower than running on-premise. Why? Because we have massive economies of scale at Amazon. Elasticity, there's no need to over-provision resources like you often have to do in an on-premise world, because the cloud will let you dial up the level of resources you need for that moment, for that workload, for that end of month, end of quarter, and dial them down when you don't need them. Breadth of functionality is the fact that we offer a whole range of services, and essentially you have capabilities that are coming from AWS, and I have some interesting stats for those of you who haven't heard them. In 2011, we announced 80 new services or 80 new capabilities as defined by a blog post. It's an interesting story. How do we define something significant? If we blog about it, we count it. If we don't blog about it, we consider it a hot fix or something minor. 2011, 80. 2012, 160. 2013, 280. 2014, 516. And 2015, 722. So the pace of innovation and the breadth of our services is one of the benefits that we think is super important for cloud. Okay, so now the real question is, why would you want to run Microsoft servers on AWS? What is more specific than, what is like the real reasons for running Windows workloads on AWS versus any other platform? And I think the first point, and maybe most important point, is that, and I could ask you this as a show of hands, but let me just postulate that all of you who are running raise your hand if you're running Microsoft on-prem. I'm assuming it's all of you. It is all of you except the ones who are lazy enough to not raise their hand. I did not say that. So the main reason so the thing about most companies and government agencies that I work with who are running Windows on-premise is that they have lots of add-ons and lots of customizations. They have workflow add-ons, expense report add-ons. They have add-ons for DoD records management. They have backup and archive. They have add-ons that provide classification levels for documents before they get so there's obviously a whole huge ecosystem of add-ons in the Microsoft world. And because the servers that we're running on AWS are the on-prem servers in our infrastructure as a service platform, we can run the vast majority, if not all of those add-ons. Secondly, we've done a lot of work to enable your workloads, including Windows workloads, to be enabled for compliance. And what I mean by that is, and I have a slide coming up that points to one of the pieces of one of the quick starts that we've put together. We have a number of accelerators to help you show that you are NIST 80-53 compliant across 125 controls. We have another accelerator for PCI. We have another accelerator for HIPAA. So we can have you run the Microsoft servers within the sandbox, the virtual private cloud sandbox that we give you. And if you do that, then we can give you a whole set of check marks that'll say you're, a long ways towards being compliant for FedRAMP, for other government standards. License management. This is something that's turned out to be quite important. In terms of license management, we have a technology called AWS Config. We have a related technology called dedicated hosts. And with dedicated hosts, servers that have a server-bound license that are bound and must only run on a single server for 90 days or a longer period, we not only provide dedicated hosts where your servers are always running on those single hosts, but in addition, AWS Config will allow you to audit and track and report on a day-by-day basis where those servers are running. Even if the server reboots, we'll be able to show you reports over time that show and allow you to prove that you're maintaining license compliance. Auditability is also enabled on the AWS platform. And what I mean by this is that essentially everything that's done, I wish this were available on premise, but everything that's done in the cloud is essentially enabled for auditing. We have VPC flow logs, which audit every network packet ingress and egress. We have AWS CloudTrail, which monitors and captures and logs and audits every single API call, successful or unsuccessful. Everything you do in AWS ultimately results in an API call, and we track all of them. Who did it? When did they do it? What was their IP location when they did it? So we know down to the atomic level what people have done. DevOps is also enabled, and I'm going to show you a lot about DevOps. I'm going to show you a lot of work that we've done that we're really proud of with CloudFormation, which is our DevOps infrastructure automation tool to allow you to do complex things like stand up all of Microsoft Server products like in the click of a button. If I can demonstrate that, not yet, Carlton. If I can demonstrate that, I'd like to show that to you. And lastly, optimization. And this is one that I really like, which means if you're running Exchange and you realize that, I'm going to show you an Exchange environment that's using GP2, that's using general purpose 2 SSD storage. The thing about that is maybe you've decided for Exchange that you want higher performance storage. Well, we happen to have a higher performance storage option. We have something called provisioned IOPS, where you can dial in the level of guaranteed IOPS, I think 99% of the time within 10% of what you dial, guaranteed. And that's a higher level of performance than what we provide with regular SSDs. So if it turns out your Exchange environment is IOPS constrained, which IOPS are sort of the meat and potatoes of Exchange, you have the ability to just turn up that knob. Alternatively, you can choose any number of processors. You can choose bigger processors with faster clock speeds. You can tweak and tune the environment to really optimize it for the end user experience. Okay, and so I view all these as important because, to be honest, without this slide, without you having reasons for why you want to run on AWS, and by the way, another reason which I'm going to get to will be cost, but that's a bigger discussion. So these are the reasons why I think you should consider running your Microsoft servers on AWS. And we're going to show you something that, although I may be biased, I think is a really great quick start. So the first thing I wanted to cover is actually the fact that we built what I'm going to show you on Amazon itself. So we decided to migrate to we're like most enterprises. We decided to migrate to the Microsoft servers lock, stock, and barrel in 2013. We migrated Exchange, SharePoint, and Lync. We originally were only going to migrate Exchange and SharePoint, and the experience was good enough, and the end user experience was also good enough that we decided to migrate Lync as well, and we're now one of the largest customers on all the three products. As my slide says, we have over 200,000 users who are running on Exchange, and if you're having a hard time reading that diagram on the right, what it says is that we're supporting 200,000 mailboxes across 4 regions: US West, US East, Dublin, and a region in Asia. And those 4 regions, 3 of which have 3 AZs, 3 availability zones, 1 of which has 2. We can sort of get into the details of why we did all that as kind of a side topic afterwards. But this is real. So this is what we're doing. And so when I show you, what I'm about to show you with Microsoft servers on AWS is based on the proof point that we've been able to run real live, our Exchange, SharePoint, and Lync environments, at very large scale. Probably, as large as most of our largest enterprise customers. So let me, so I wanted to show you something, and let's see. I'm actually, in order to keep things simple, I'm not going to do the live demo here. When you guys get my slides, you will see you'll have a slide here that says launch stack for SharePoint. And what I want you to be able to see is that when you click on, you should view the template just to see what it is. You should view the graphical designer just to see how we have orchestrated a whole bunch of servers working together. SharePoint uses Active Directory, it uses SQL Server, but it sits in different subnets, and those different subnets map to different availability zones. So we do a whole bunch of complex stuff, but so you guys should maybe when you get my slides do this, and then if you click the link on the right, you can run the thing yourself. We have a whole quick start on SharePoint. You can run the thing yourself and stand up SharePoint in the same way that I'm going to show you standing up all the Microsoft servers. So really exciting stuff. And a minor note, I'm going to come back to CloudFormation, but you have not only this graphical view, but if you were to scroll below the bottom of my slide, you would also see the CloudFormation code, the JSON code in which we're representing infrastructure as JSON constructs. And so it's, so what you're actually kicking off is JSON, which translates into the infrastructure on our platform. Okay, so now the star of the show. Woohoo, cheers, happiness. You're glad you stayed till the end of the day. We just released earlier this month Microsoft servers on the AWS cloud, authored by Bill Jacoby and Santiago Cardenas, sitting in the front row. This is something that you can get to, and this is what I'm going to show for the remainder of the presentation with some of the under the hood kinds of details about it. This is available, so if you were to do a search on AWS Quick Start, one word, Quick Start, Microsoft servers, 2 words, you'll pull this up, and it gives you a whole deployment guide and stands up what I'm about to show you. Okay, so what is the accelerator for Microsoft servers? This is a little bit of the this is sort of the under the cover piece of it. So we have a single virtual private cloud, which you see on the right, that spans both availability zones, the top one and the bottom one. Something you should all be aware of if you're not already is that in our world, all you have to think about from an application perspective is a subnet. And we will do the mapping between a subnet and an availability zone, which is a different physical data center. So this is a really great concept because it means that if you lay out your application across multiple subnets, we give you high availability because we're supporting those multiple subnets across multiple availability zones, which have different power, different ISPs, different, they're in different geographic conditions, different floodplains, hopefully no floodplains, et cetera. So single VPC supports all the Microsoft servers. We're using, like I just said about subnets, multi-availability zone for high availability. We have 2 primary subnets. We have a public subnet and a private subnet. The public subnet on the left is really the management subnet. And I have it in my diagram here as being internet facing, so that you would RDP into the Bastion host or the remote desktop services host in the DMZ across the internet, and then you would jump into the private servers that are protected by a private subnet. You don't have to do it exactly that way. The DMZ that you see on the left could all be just a management subnet with nothing but private addresses that you're accessing from your on-premise location over either VPN or Direct Connect. Direct Connect is our dedicated network pipe between your facility and ours, which connects you not only to the nearest region, but also to all the regions that are on the AWS backbone for that, for example, for Americas. So Direct Connect is awesome. And I just, for those of you who are security minded, I don't want you to think that the only way to manage a Microsoft environment is to use the public internet. You can, this DMZ on the left can be coming directly from your on-premise. Okay, so some other little things I say here. The 2 Active Directory sites are also mapped to 2 availability zones for high availability. And like this little speech I went through, you can connect to on-premises through AWS Direct Connect. If you want to do that latter piece, you should get a hold of me or another solutions architect. It's not hard, but it's not, it's not a nursery rhyme either. So it's a very useful Direct Connect gives you on-premise Microsoft servers and cloud-based Microsoft servers. Okay, so let's jump to the next slide. Okay, and so to sort of peel back the onion a couple of layers deeper, the previous slide was all about infrastructure. In the Microsoft world, what we've implemented is a database availability group for Exchange, Lync paired pools, which you can sort of see in the diagram here, SQL Server using always-on availability groups for high availability. In case one of the SQL servers dies, you can fail over to the other one in an automated way. Microsoft, I wish I could take credit personally for this, but Microsoft provides a brick architecture in which over the last several years and versions, they've been moving towards this multi-role model for servers, such that you can add more servers, and multiple Exchange servers gives you more mailboxes in a fairly linear way. Same for Lync and same for the sort of the same for SharePoint. But the beauty of that is that when I kind of show you how we stand up everything you're seeing in the diagram, it gives you something that's very modular, and you'll be able to stamp out 10,000 users at a time. And if you decide you want 20,000 users, you can stamp that out too. And Microsoft makes a lot of that available through their brick architecture. This is sort of my point about add npods for n scale. And just for all of you who are in the Microsoft world, you already know this. Use the way that we built our Quick Start, and the way that we think about Microsoft is the way that Microsoft people think about their servers, which is to say, Microsoft starts off with capacity calculators for Exchange and Lync and SharePoint, and if you run these calculators, you tell Excel how many users, what's the size of the mailboxes. What is the profile of email message? Do you have big messages, little messages, small messages? Do you have attachments? What's the number of messages? You fill in all these inputs into the calculator, and then the capacity calculator for Exchange will tell you how you need to architect Exchange to run well. And we follow all that guidance before we created the Quick Start that I'm about to show you. Okay, so now I'm about to live on the edge, and in 2 ways. One is there's about a 5% chance that I'm going to fall off the stage, and secondly, Carlton, if we could switch to my laptop. Okay, and so what I want to do is I want to do a demo in 2 stages. I want to show you some of the servers that we have up and running, and then I want to show you the clients. The clients are going to be really boring because I'm going to show you stuff that you know and probably use every day, but I want to show you that what's working is what you'd expect hosted on AWS. So let's start off with the servers, and let's see. What I'm going to do is if you have really good eyesight, you'll notice that where my mouse is, it says Oregon. My servers are located in Oregon, and the first thing I should show you is the CloudFormation template that built these things. And so you'll notice here that what I have called MS servers. Again, I apologize for the small type, but we have a master template right here. Then we have an Active Directory stack, a template, the first one we kick off. Then we kick off in parallel the Exchange stack and SQL stack. Why do I do that? Because I've got to kick off, because everything depends on AD, so AD comes first. I kick off SQL second because SharePoint can't be installed until SQL's installed. I kick off Exchange in the same layer as SQL because Exchange has to be installed before Lync because Exchange extends the schema and so does Lync. And I can't have them running in parallel because I can't have extending the schema potentially colliding with each other. And then the last thing I run is SharePoint, which is on top of obviously SQL as well as AD, and Lync, which is running really just on top of AD, but with the schema extensions that came from Exchange, which provides what Microsoft calls unified messaging. So that's what, and just a tiny more peek under the covers. What I want to show you here is that if I jump, this is the execution of CloudFormation, what you're seeing here. And what I want to show you here is, and by the way, this is live. What I want to show you here is, for example, when I kicked off the process, one of the very first things that I created was this networking enclave called Virtual Private Cloud. And if I click on VPC over here, it actually tells me the name of the resource. It tells me the name of the resource in the console that's been created. So this is kind of that JSON-y template I mentioned earlier. And these events are just the sequential execution of the commands in order to automate and create sort of a DevOps repeatable, scalable environment. Okay, so let's actually jump into the servers and see what is this thing that I created. So let's go to EC2. EC2 is Elastic Compute Cloud. It's kind of our instance or virtual machine service. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into my remote desktop gateway, and I've got a. Let me just find my remote desktop gateway here. Okay, so I'm going to just click on. I know the type is really small. I'm clicking on Connect. So before I even jump into that, let me just tell you and make it very obvious that what we have here are servers, just like the diagram. We have servers for the remote desktop gateway, Exchange, Windows Server failover cluster node 1, that's a SQL Server cluster, Exchange 1, Exchange 2, Lync frontend 1, Lync frontend 2, SharePoint app, SharePoint web frontend. So those are all the servers that we stood up physically, not just in the diagram. So I'm going to connect to my remote desktop gateway. And you guys have all seen this before. I'm logging in. This is an example on the public internet. And what you're actually seeing here, what it looks to me like you're seeing here is the host that I was logged into is my remote desktop gateway up here in the corner, RDGW1. And I had also previously, in that instance, I had also remoted into, for example, domain controller 1. So I'm going to do something here. In PowerShell, the first question that people have is, well, what have you stood up? And I want to just do get AD user, filter none. I want to just show you that we have lots and lots and lots of users. So if I were to let this sit and continue going, and you were to count them, you would come up with over 10,000 users, and we don't have to be that. We don't have to take such a bad approach. I can say get AD users and just suffix this with .count, and that will. Let me just see what I'm doing here. Oh. How many of you notice this? Get AD user is the commandlet, not get AD users. So let's try this again. Thank you. And so we have 10,110 users loaded in AD. And and again, this is all stuff that you know if you're in the Microsoft world. I've got ADUC, Active Directory users and computers running, and I could, and this is all the stuff that you know and are used to. If I want to look at the computers that AD is supporting, you can see all the servers that we've been talking about. Standard, regular, garden, variety. So part of my point here is there's a bunch of AWS stuff, but then when it comes to the Microsoft stuff, it works the way you would expect. Okay, and I'll just do one more tiny thing, and then I want to jump to the client demo. So my one more tiny thing here will be, that's kind of ugly. Let's just, for the sake of, I just want you guys to realize, so we're on DC1. I'm on the domain controller 1, which is in a different data center than domain controller 2. Remember my diagram, different subnets equals different availability zones. Availability zones represent different data centers that are all part of a larger region. These different data centers are miles and miles and miles away from each other. Maybe, I don't know if we've ever publicly defined exactly how many miles, but a 2-digit or 3-digit number of miles away from each other. But I want you to be able to see that from within my subnet, I'm on AZ1 because I'm in DC1, but if I ping Exchange 2, if I ping a server in the other subnet, I want you all to see that our subnet to subnet, or better said, availability zone to availability zone latency is less than 1 millisecond across the distance between our AZs. So we give you a really, really, really powerful or robust networking infrastructure to run anything, and in this case, the Microsoft servers. Okay, so I'm going to sort of stop here and let's see. Let me figure out what my next slide is. I think I'm jumping to the client piece. So Carlton, if I could get you to switch. Oh, you did. Thank you. And so what you're seeing here, so this is just a screenshot of what you saw directly in the console. This is all what's running, and I won't get into all the details of what every column means, but this is kind of the meat and potatoes of AWS. So what I want to do next is do a client demo. So before I do the client demo, I just want to point out a couple things. I want to point out that everything is running on AWS. We've deployed this from a single template. So when I showed you that template, and when we ran the master template, it called the other templates in that nested, layered fashion I talked about. What we ended up with was the 14 servers, if you counted them on the previous slide, 2 availability zones, 10,106 users, if anyone's counting. Exchange users have 5 gig mailboxes. My client demo will walk you through Lync, but you'll see the usual things, IM and presence, but you'll see the less usual things like voice over IP and video. So you're going to see, because we're running the on-prem servers on AWS, there's no reason, your expectation should be that everything works, and in fact everything does work. And I've set up a couple SharePoint templates as well. I've made them everyone enabled, and to run this whole thing that you just saw is about $14 an hour. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, so this is going to be a little bit hokey, I believe, because I'm about to show you the client demo, and I say hokey in the sense that what you're going to see is stuff that you probably do every day, but I just didn't want you to see only servers and not know that the stuff actually works. Okay, and also, I'm really bad at giving demos in a room with the door closed all by myself, so I feel like the demo could be more exciting, but here it is. And we need sound. I don't know if we have sound for this, and I don't know if I need to click again. I'm gonna, So if we don't have sound, I'll do the soundtrack personally. And I'm going to click again to try to kick off the video. No, that didn't kick off the video. If you can, Carlton, if you can go back to my laptop, I'll kick off the video from my laptop. And my concern is, because I don't have an audio cable plugged in, that you won't have sound, but that just means you get to hear more from me in person. Whoops. Let's switch over to an actual end-user demo showing. So you're not hearing it. It's coming out of my speakers on my laptop up front. So let me narrate. I've got two users, a user on the left and a user on the right. We're going to start off with Outlook. The user on the left is going to just do ultra basic. We're good. We're good. We're going to do ultra basic stuff. The user on the left, you hopefully saw that there's a whole bunch of users that we had available in Active Directory, just like you saw earlier. We're going to send an email to a user and log in and go retrieve the email from user 2. No biggie. I'm going to log in. This was recorded on 2 PCs and just placed side by side. User 2 received the email. User 2 clicked on the email. Typos and all, it came through. And user 2 is going to reply to the email. It's a little bit hard for me to see, but the one user who's online shows that they're online with presence. So it is an integrated demo. Everything's running in the same VPC, which means that the server integration you'd expect to see is all there across all the servers. And user 2 replied to user 1. User 1, I think I know that guy. User 1 decided to have an IM conversation. Sometimes you go from email to IM. Let's IM user 2. User 2 has to accept it. Another IM message. I'm a slow typist. And I mean, again, okay, I don't know what was typed, but it came off over here. And then this user wants to send over a SharePoint link. I wanted to show the integration of all the servers. So user 1, in this case, is saying something like, have you seen the analyst report on the SharePoint site? And so we're going to send, so we're now looking at a SharePoint site with a blog and a team site and a document library. I can't get terribly excited because it's standard stock stuff, but it's on AWS. We're going to copy and send the link, which we just did. User 2 clicks on the link, and boom, the same SharePoint site, what you'd expect. The only thing remarkable is that it's not remarkable, and maybe slightly remarkable that it's all running on AWS with a push of a button. And we're going to kind of end the demo with, wow, this is interesting information. We need to video chat about what we just discussed or what you just emailed me. So one of the users, I think the user over here is saying, I can either call you, or I can video you, or I can screen share with you, or I can invite other people. And in this case, it's a request for a video conference. And I had the 2 laptops facing me, so it's 2 cameras that, you get it. And the only thing that's amazing, or the thing that to me is actually really interesting, is the fact that these laptops are in what we call IAD 21, Herndon, Virginia, and my servers are where you saw in Oregon in our data center on US West. So we have over 2,000 miles between where the laptops physically sat and where the servers were, and you saw for yourself all functionality, and I think a reasonably performant, smooth video session, ending with me looking like a dork. Okay, so let's switch back to the slides. Oh no, we're on the slides, I'm sorry. No, we're on the laptop. Let's switch back to the slides, good. Okay, thank you. So now, what have you seen? So what you've seen is you've seen the deployment of the CloudFormation template that builds all the servers. So I don't think I showed it to you in the originally, but when you kick off this template, what happens is you are prompted for the name of your stack, Microsoft servers. You're prompted for the network configuration. What is the CIDR range of the virtual private cloud? What is the CIDR range? These are all those subnets I mentioned. What is the CIDR range of subnet 1 and subnet 2? The private subnets? What are the ranges of the public subnets? What are the key pair names? Over on the right, you'll see some of the, what is the DNS name of this configuration, example.com. What's the NetBIOS name, example. And then some of the SharePoint specific things and SQL Server specific things and Exchange Server specific things. So there's a lot of stuff. I want to point out that these templates are auto-filled or filled in with smart defaults. So the only thing we actually prompt you, again, if you can look at, if you sort of look really carefully, you can see that key pair name is a drop-down that you've got to select. Passwords over on the right, those blank boxes you've got to fill in, but we give you something that if you type a few passwords and press create, you've got yourself 14 servers supporting 10,000 users running all the Microsoft servers. Okay, so that's this is what's called the parameters of CloudFormation. So you create the template, and then the user is prompted for the parameters to customize the thing that you're building. Now the next thing, that's right before you actually run the thing, in CloudFormation you're allowed to click a button that says, tell me the cost. For those of you who can't see it, this red box just says estimate cost, and there's a cost link. And if you click on that cost link, you jump to the AWS Simple Monthly Calculator, which tells you the costs of the resources that you've provisioned. So in this case, the 10,000 users costs about $9,997 per month. We're talking about $1 per user per month for what you saw, the servers you saw, provisioned with 5 gig mailboxes and a terabyte of SSD storage for user profiles. Let me just be kind of clear, truth in advertising. This is basically the floor of your pricing. If you want to add more storage for far more site collections in SharePoint, if you want to add 25 gig mailboxes, you can go wild and you can add anything and everything that you want to, but our admittedly floor pricing of all this is about $1 per user per month. So why? I'm gonna hold questions to the end because I have so much content, but why Amazon? I gave you sort of the 5 reasons on my second slide. Things like you can run your add-ons and you can do auditability and you can be more compliance oriented out the gate, et cetera. And our cost is really good. So I wanted to just make this point. You'll have access to all these slides and you'll have access to all these links. Okay, so this is actually the drill down into the Simple Monthly Calculator. I won't go through the whole thing. I just wanted that in there so you can see that we've got down to the details. Okay, and now sort of a business point about everything I've been talking about. This is something that always comes up with every vendor that we run on Amazon. Every vendor has different licensing policies. And in the case of Microsoft, we provide an hourly license included rate for Windows Server and for SQL Server Standard Edition. And if you want to use Exchange, SharePoint, Lync, or Skype for Business, you have to have those licenses yourself, and then we employ a BYOL model where you import the your own licenses into AWS and use them. Again, truth in advertising, my calculator doesn't include the cost that you paid, presumably Microsoft, for your licenses. That's part of why I said this is a floor, not a ceiling. I should also mention that, and it gets kind of complicated, but I should also mention that if you have an enterprise agreement and you have software assurance, you can use your licenses on multi-tenant instances. But if you don't have an enterprise agreement, without software assurance, without license mobility as part of your software assurance agreement, in those cases you've got to run the Microsoft servers on dedicated hosts. Microsoft requires that in those cases, Exchange, Server, Skype for Business are server bound and can't be moved off of that host, I think, any less than every 90 days. Okay, so lots of detail about the licensing here, but I just wanted to make sure that was all available. So this has been kind of an under the hood kind of discussion, and I want to give you a little bit more under the hood, because you come to these things because, I don't know, if you're like me, you kind of go to car shows and you want to see like the supercharger under the hood. You want to see the big exhaust system that somebody put on. So that's what I want to show you here. And a couple things real quick under the hood. I've been talking about this VPC thing, Virtual Private Cloud, for a while. Virtual Private Cloud is the networking backbone, the networking framework for all the networking infrastructure of running anything, whether it's Windows or Linux. And within Virtual Private Cloud, you configure security groups, which is our fancy term, which is our term for firewalls. Network access control lists are for protecting, is a firewall for the subnet itself. The security group is a firewall for an instance or a number of instances. So it's kind of the granularity. One is stateful, one is stateless. We provide remote administration through remote desktop, which you saw. And we have this concept of principle of least privilege, which just means only give the minimum access rights to every resource in AWS to allow its job to be performed without giving any additional rights that aren't absolutely necessary as a best security practice. Okay, now, this is just a diagram of just pure SharePoint, and I wanted you to just be able to take a look at this. Had I kicked off the SharePoint template at this point, I would have come back and shown you that in just the period of time that I've been talking, we would have stood up SharePoint for you live and in real time. I didn't want to do all the back and forth switching. So this is the quick start that we have available. The link is live. If you want to run just SharePoint, at the click of a CloudFormation template for the SharePoint quick start. SQL Server, I wanted you to see what this architecture looks like. It is the SQL Server always on capability, which is Microsoft's latest and greatest capability, supported originally in Denali in 2012 and 2014, and as of this month in 2016, which, by the way, we now support. SQL Server 2016 we now support on AWS. Okay, and by the way, there are other sessions where this is being demonstrated. If you go to the session on I want to say hybrid infrastructure, led by Joe Spezio, you can actually see a demonstration of SQL Server always on AWS. Okay, so now a super important point. One of the biggest blockers or roadblocks to people wanting to go to cloud has been the perception that latency is going to kill me. How could I put servers in Oregon and put clients in Washington D.C. and have any good performance? So here is the data. The data, and for those, I know you can't really see it, but what I'm doing here is a trace route of my domain controller over the internet, and my total round trip time, or my average round trip time, is 88 milliseconds. When I use the Direct Connect technology, which is a direct networking connection between your facility and a Direct Connect partner like Equinix or CoreSite, which in turn puts you directly on the AWS backbone, we drop from 88 milliseconds to 59 milliseconds round trip. So this is not the one-way latency, this is the round trip latency. To give you an idea of how good this is and why I'm excited about it, is Microsoft publishes that Lync, all of its capabilities, the video I showed, will work with a latency envelope of 120 milliseconds or less. So we are running Lync across the country, over 2,000 miles, at half, with 50% headroom before we would hit the limit that Microsoft would publish as unacceptable. So you can essentially draw a circle around the AWS regions, and based on this 59 millisecond figure, if 2,000 miles is 59 milliseconds, and if we assume, and you can there are lots of details, but if you assume that you can go, that will double the latency if we double the distance, 120 milliseconds for 4,000 miles. You can draw a circle around our regions, and to be conservative, just say, if you're within about 3,000 miles and you have direct connect, you'll have a good experience with things like Lync, things like hosted desktops. We have a service called Amazon Workspaces, and other very latency sensitive applications. By the way, I consider SharePoint latency sensitive. If you've ever gone to a SharePoint document library thousands of miles away, SharePoint has a chatty protocol. So latency is something where you want it low for everything you do, obviously. Okay, so what made all this possible was using a JSON template that kicked off CloudFormation. The real beauty of CloudFormation is that we do something that is really clever. What we do is we have this JSON format, the format that originally came out of JavaScript, to define all the resources, all the infrastructure resources that you're going to kick off, and then we embed PowerShell inside of that infrastructure template, giving us kind of what I consider to be, chocolate and peanut butter. Got it. So you can build all of your AWS infrastructure with CloudFormation, and CloudFormation will call the PowerShell to do the configuration of the Microsoft servers, which is a Microsoft best practice. Okay, and I wanted to just say that this is actually just sort of a visual pointer that here I'm creating a resource called frontend1. This is an AWS resource. It's an instance. It's a virtual machine. And within this template, I'm calling the PowerShell script in that red box. And so this is just that integration of the template and of infrastructure and application configurability. This is something that's also really great. So we have a service called AWS Code Commit. AWS Code Commit is a Git compatible source code control or text control system with full versioning that we provide. You can use GitHub, you can use AWS Code Commit, but the point is that you can start to treat your infrastructure as code. So as you build your own templates, as you customize the templates that we give you, they're fully version controlled. You can add features, test them, put them on a dev branch, merge them with your master branch. And so all the things that developers have been doing for years and years in GitHub using Git, you can do as well with infrastructure. And the magic of AWS is when you combine when you create programmable infrastructure. And this is part of what makes it happen. I won't go through all of the commands here. You can look at my slides, but I've got a whole bunch. I've got 4 or 5 Git commands which work great on infrastructure. We also have, I mentioned one of the benefits that we have is compliance, and another quick start accelerator we have is called the Accelerator for Compliance, which gives you basically the VPCs with all the lockdown capabilities, turning on logging and auditing and configuration, such that if you were to run this template, the Microsoft Servers template, inside of the compliance template, you would be 90% of the way to a FedRampable set of servers running on AWS. And there are separate sessions on exactly this accelerator here at reInvent or here at Summit. Auditability. This is the service that captures every API call, captures every change, when, where, how in your infrastructure. Amazon Inspector is a service that allows you to look at, have you employed security best practices? We capture every packet that comes in and out of a VPC. We log packets that are denied access, as well as packets that are allowed access. And we also provide what we call CloudWatch logs. So we have our own monitoring. By the way, our monitoring shouldn't be confused with Microsoft monitoring. So we encourage you to use SCOM, System Center Operations Manager, and the SCOM management packs for all the servers, for Active Directory, for SQL Server, et cetera, et cetera. And CloudWatch logs can be an aggregation point for all the Microsoft logs. And the beauty of that is, one of the things that's been hard for me in the past is every Microsoft server has its own logging, but they're not centralized. So CloudWatch Logs allows you to centralize the Windows logs, event logs, the event tracing for Windows logs, the server logs themselves, and then you have one place where you can go to look to see, what's happened on my system. Okay, so with a couple minutes over, I just want to thank you for your time and attention, and hope you're excited about the Microsoft servers on AWS Accelerator.